Hello there, lovely people. It's Alex from Nintendo Live here, and I'm not alone. I'm joined by Mr. Xeon.
Oh man, you know what? I'm feeling tired, but I'm looking legendary today. I tell you what, Alex.
It's quite early for you, isn't it?
It is, but that's okay. I'm glad to be here. We got a big topic to talk about.
We do, but we're not just going to do it the two of us. We've also got, and he's the one editing this video as well, Mr. Felix.
Hello, Mr. Felixo here.
Precisely.
Hello,
yes.
hello.
Right, so there's a situation occurring, right? Breath of the Wild 2, or the sequel to The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, whatever you want to call it, it's been delayed, as I predicted. Just dropping that in again, because slightly proud of that, even though it makes me sad. So that does mean
proud
that there is a gaping, great big Zelda gap this year that was originally going to be substantially filled, but now needs at least something to go in its place. It's not an absolute guarantee by any stretch of the imagination, but I don't know. I don't know. I sort of think that there's scope for a Zelda game or two, probably one this year as well. So we're going to discuss what we believe that could be. Who wants to kick things off? I know who. It's Mr. Xeon.
Well, okay, so there are plenty of different routes that Nintendo can go, and you know they could be safe and they could pick something that has been sitting around collecting dust on the Wii U, which is Twilight Princess HD, which I think a lot of people want that. It's been years since I've played that game, so I think that'd be nice to see. And they've already given it a nice coat of paint, so it should be an easy transfer from the Wii U to the Switch. But they could also bring over Wind Waker HD, which is the one that I very much prefer, because I loved that game growing up, and I have not played it since I was a child, even though I bought the Wii U copy. But I'm curious how they're going to release them, because we've seen, Nintendo's done some, I would almost say silly. They've made some silly decisions when it comes to releasing different games, like Skyward Sword came out last year, and how do you guys remember how that came out? Was it just one? It was one game, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Was it
one game for $60 and whatever the equivalent is in my currency.
A lot, I would say. But then they'll do things like Mario 3D All-Stars, where that was 3 games. Each of them still had, a bit of, they had improvements, like especially with Galaxy, you were able to play it without the pointer controls and or the motion controls rather, right? Didn't they map like one of those things to a button, the spin or something weird?
Yeah, that was. I think you could still, like, using split Joy-Con, you could shake a Joy-Con and it would still work, but not entirely certain about that.
Shake. Okay. Well, but at least they did. They still. It wasn't just a straight port, or it wasn't. What's the word I'm trying to use? They put some effort into those still, and they released them for the same price as Skyward Sword. So I don't know. I would love to see them come back as a bundle, but what do you guys think? Do you think that's impossible? Do you think they'll release them individually? Maybe not at all. What are your thoughts on those?
I don't think that they're gonna release them in a bundle, just because people will buy Wind Waker and Twilight Princess separately for $60, just like Skyward Sword. Even though it sucks, I think that's what they're gonna do. And yeah, I think it's kind of a bummer because, something similar to 3D All-Stars would be amazing for Zelda games. But what about you, Alex? What do you think?
You know what? I can almost see them doing both in a weird way. I can see them releasing them separately on the eShop, or you can get a special physical version which has both of the games on a cartridge, and or more likely one of the games on the cartridge and the other one you download. But sort of the only way to get that dual pack is to get the special version of it or something like that. And I have read and heard so many times that these games are like a dead cert for Switch, and people saying things like, "Oh, yep, it's going to be in the next Nintendo Direct," and then it doesn't happen. I'm convinced they still are happening because, I mean, come on, the Switch has sold how many? And especially like the situation right now, the timing is absolutely perfect. They've delayed one Zelda game. They've got this big gaping Zelda gap of theirs. they can fill it with, I nearly said Breath of the Wild, they can fill it with Twilight Princess and Wind Waker HDs.
I would love a bundle just of those two games. It would just look very good. Also, like in box art, just like, I don't know. I would just love that.
I'd like it if they mixed the box arts. You know, they made something original using both of them. I mean, that is extremely unlikely to happen, but...
No, but just like, I'm excited to see the box art of, you know, you have Wind Waker on one side and then Twilight Prince.
Or like a reversible cover. That could work.
Ooh.
Oh, that could be so cool.
It would be nice if they did original cover art for it, though, too. But and maybe it's, I don't know, just seeing what Nintendo did with the 3D All-Stars collection makes me think that they won't. But I think that the Zelda team might be a little more artsy than the Mario side from time to time. So maybe it could happen. But I did want to say, Alex, that it's not your fault. You did the right thing. You just spoke honestly. But while you were describing the way that Nintendo could potentially release this, I was like, not having a panic attack, but but I was definitely feeling awful. The way you were like, yeah, maybe it'll come out with like one game will be on the cartridge, the other will be a manual, or like you'll have to download it. And then I was also thinking in my head like, and it'll only be available for a year, and then they're gonna remove it off of the eShop. And just like the wheels were turning, and I was like, oh, please, Nintendo, just stop it.
I'd like to think after should we be generous and we'll say the feedback that they got online for the whole Super Mario 3D All-Stars thing, that maybe they won't do that kind of limited release again, because I think it was universally detested.
It's just so weird. Such a weird thing to do. So Nintendo thing to do.
I mean, that is a good point, though. I really do hope that they listen to that feedback, because it was very unanimous. I think just across the board, which is, I don't know. Like I was even listening to a video the other day where somebody was getting mad. I think it was Kit and Krista, actually, who used to work for Nintendo. Ooh. They were talking about on their podcast about how upset, even like. Or not upset how that they were, but they were like, imagine being a developer, spending all this time making Mario 35, and then the publisher just pulls the plug on this game that you put all of your time and effort into.
Yeah.
And not to go speak about Mario 35 more and go on a tangent, but it is really, I'm comforted to know that I think everybody's just mad about that situation.
I don't think I've seen a thing more unanimously agreed on the internet than, it was just a bad idea with the timed release things.
Yeah, certainly not from Nintendo, because they usually, I mean, they're occasionally out of touch, but they're not that out of touch like this really was.
Yeah.
There's usually some sort of method in their madness, like with things like, they released, 2015? It was such a terrible E3. And it was like universally hated. And it was because they were in the transition to the Switch and they just needed essentially filler. We can see that with hindsight, but at the time... Oh, yeah,
that was like Blast Ball year, right? And
that
Triforce
was,
Heroes and stuff?
Yeah.
That's right.
And Amiibo Festival. It was a car crash.
I think Mario Maker was there at least.
It was my first E3 as a professional as well. It was
what a lovely time.
Entertaining.
A game I would love to see, at least I would love to see some multiplayer Zelda games, because it is very fun to play, but I would love to see some, because there's Zelda Four Swords Adventure on the GameCube. I would love something like that to play with friends, because I just think it would be a very fun time.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they dabbled with it a bit with a new one with Triforce Heroes. That was also announced in 2015, I think.
It was. You're right, I think. Yeah, they had it playable on the show floor at least, but
that was a bit unfortunate timing, because people were waiting for Breath of the Wild, and then here is something completely different.
Yeah, it's just like Federation Force. It's like everyone's waiting for a new Metroid game. Here's a spin-off that doesn't really feature Samus. Great move, guys. But what about the alternatives? We've talked about, sort of the idea of just Twilight Princess HD and Wind Waker HD. They're the obvious safe bets. But what about something more akin to like, I nearly said the Wind Waker HD again, for God's sake.
Oh, no.
Link's Awakening.
We know what Alex wants.
The remaster. Link's
Yes.
Awakening. The easiest one to look at that would be Oracle of Ages and Oracle of Seasons, because they fall very neatly into the same category and could probably work well with the same art style and on the same engine.
I would love to see some more 2D Zeldas on the Switch. Link's Awakening, very cool game. I would love to see, maybe you could even do the original Zelda in that art style or something like. I would love to see the original Zelda, remade for the Switch.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of Link's Awakening was one of those like weird picks where I think a lot of people just didn't expect it to happen, and so I think it does kind of open up the floor for really sort of like any Zelda remakes. Like maybe someday we'll really get a Link to the Past remake, and I think a lot of people don't want that. Kind of like it's just such a pure game for so many people, and I like it a lot. But it wasn't my first, so I don't have as many nostalgic. I don't know. I don't cherish it as much as some people do, but yeah, like maybe we could see that someday. And I think Grezzo did such a good job with Link's Awakening that I wouldn't be scared, to see them kind of touch whatever Zelda game they decided to. But yeah, classic Zelda would be really sweet to see come back, because they did. Alex, was it like the Satellaview? Was that where they did that like remake of?
It was, BS, The Legend of
Zelda?
Zelda, I believe, yeah.
Man, it'd be nice if they just brought. What if they brought that? That literally just triggered in my brain. It wasn't even. That wasn't a setup. It was just like, wait, what if they just released that? Because now we know it's possible to see some of these Satellaview games come back. It'd be really sweet if Nintendo was just like, you know what? Here you go. It's just on the Nintendo Switch Online app for Super Nintendo users. You just get this remake of classic Zelda, and sure, it wouldn't be that Grezzo style like Felix was talking about, but it would be potentially easy thing for Nintendo to just calm themselves down with and cover the calendar. Just they got some Zelda in.
Here's an easy thing. Just make a different game. I mean.
Oh, could you imagine?
No, Nintendo would never.
So the last time, I was thinking about this the other day too, the last time we've gotten a classic like 2D Zelda game, I think, please correct me if I'm wrong, besides, I guess Triforce Heroes counts, and that was probably 2015 or 2016. It doesn't? You don't think so?
It was, it
fair.
is kind of a 2D Zelda, but it was so different. I would definitely classify it as a spin-off.
That's fair. That's a good place to put it. A good seat to put it in. But otherwise, it's been since 2013, I think, with A Link Between Worlds.
Almost
And
10 years.
Yeah, isn't that crazy? It
Bloody
feels
hell.
awful. But so I wonder if it's time to finally see something new in that regard. And I wonder if Nintendo would give Grezzo the rights to or the chance to make something all on their own. Because I think the last game they touched was Miitopia on
Yeah.
Switch.
I love how you said that.
Miitopia.
Just kind of just questioning it.
I mean, if Grezzo were to make an original 2D Zelda, they did a fantastic job. A Link's Awakening, such a gorgeous game. I would love to see an original 2D Zelda game in that style.
Yeah, I think it's not out of the question necessarily either, since like they already have the engine built. They're already working so closely with Nintendo. They're trusted. Not only did they do Link's Awakening, they did the other Zelda remakes on 3DS, and I guess I know they did Ever Oasis, but it feels, I don't know. I'm very hopeful that they'll announce something this year, because if Grezzo is working on something Zelda related, it's not out of the question to see 2 Zelda games come out next year. But I wonder if Nintendo would be like, hey, Grezzo, we're not done with Breath of the Wild 2 yet. Hurry up, come on. Just booting them with the broom and just telling them to get it done quicker. But so I don't know. I think that'd be cool to see as well.
You know the Zelda 2?
I do, yes.
Imagine that, but in the style of Metroid Dread. A 2D, 2D, 3D graphics.
Sure.
I'm not sure how that makes me feel.
You move around as Link, but you have the Samus movement. Very smooth, very cool.
It would break the game, because half the challenge from the game is the fact that Link behaves like cardboard.
It's just such a stupid idea. Man, would I love to see that.
Can I make a really deep cut?
Before you do, I just want to say, Felix, don't worry. It's not a stupid idea. So many people love that game. I personally am also just not really one of them because I think I played it when I was a kid and was like, this is hard. This is nothing like Zelda. But I think lots of people would freak out.
Oh, you've never sounded more American. This is hard.
Did I sound that bad?
Yeah, well, I might be exaggerating it for comedic purposes, but yes, you sounded that bad.
I'm looking forward to going back and listening to this. Thank you. Okay, so what was your did you say it was a deep cut?
Yes.
Okay.
Ancient stone tablets. Does that ring a bell to anyone?
Yes, but why?
It was another Satellaview Zelda game. One that was
Is that the one where you play as the weird kid?
I don't know. I can't remember. It popped into my head and I've just searched it. And I'm frantically looking at the Zelda wiki entry now to see whether I can answer that. I don't think I can.
Oh no.
Dang. I do remember.
Unsurprisingly, it's a game I've never played because it was released on the bloody Satellaview.
Well, I do remember there was, I'm looking it up now myself too, but there was this weird game that was like Zelda. It was like Link to the Past, but you played as some kid with a baseball cap. And no, it wasn't Ness.
I was going to say Earthbound.
Yeah. Am I just blending things? Oh yeah, he did. He wore a backwards cap, it looks like. But I don't know if this is the ancient stone tablets or not. But it would really be nice to see some of those games, because I know there's people talk about that you can emulate them and things, but that's just not very accessible to the modern public always, or we don't want to try it, and yeah, then I'd appreciate that.
Also, it's not legitimate, is it?
You're right.
You know, I know there's plenty of people that emulate and have no, sort of negative feelings about it, but I would always much prefer to be able to do something officially and also do it on the Switch, which is just flat out the most convenient way to play games, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. So one thing I just clicked on an old advertisement for potentially this game. I'm not sure because I don't I can't read Japanese in any form.
I can't read.
Sion can't read just anything.
No, I know. I'm sorry. I've just been struggling my way through life, but how am I doing, guys? But I found this advertisement. I'm gonna send it to Felix so you could throw it up in the video here. Okay. But it's like this weird 3D, like kind of early Pixar days render, I guess, of like a Triforce with somebody holding a sword and shield standing on top of a piece of Triforce, but they have a satellite attached to their head, and and there's a fairy like touching it with a wand or a finger, I'm not sure. But then up in the top right corner, it says a time. It says 18 to 19. So it looks like the game was potentially only playable during this time, maybe. I'm not exactly sure. Maybe someone can...
it was only available to play for like 4 specific hour slots a week, I think, off the top of my head. It was...
okay.
Yeah, it was a bizarre choice. An interesting choice. One that clearly didn't work. Everything's on demand these days.
What? You can only play it 4 times? That's weird. That's like the Nintendo thing, but on a whole another level.
Yeah, the Satellaview was weird. It was kind of like games that behaved like TV channels and TV programs. It was really bizarre.
Bizarre.
And the fact that you're surprised to hear all this information means it clearly wasn't a success.
I've never heard of the Satellaview before Sion talked about it in the Chrono Cross video. That's how small this is. Or maybe I'm just very stupid and we need to cut this out.
It's one of those things.
Common, I mean, I was about to say it's not common knowledge, and then now everyone in the comments is going to go, oh, well, I've heard of it. And yeah, it's sort of like hardcore viewers of our channel, you're the type of person to know about the Satellaview, but I'm talking about the wider public. Ask your mum what's a Satellaview, and she'll, I don't know, she'll probably assume it's some kind of fish. I really don't know.
I ask my mum and she just starts, oh, it's this blah, 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 and it's just like...
That's the weirdest laugh I've done in a long time.
Are you a gamer, Mom?
I'm a Satellaview gamer, nothing else.
Could you imagine if Nintendo decided to replicate this original release model for the game, and they were like, Yep, guys. Remember back in the day, in Japan, you could play the BS Zelda and Ancient Stone tablets for 1 hour. Well, it's now the year 2022. We're gonna make it 2 hours.
Everyone would hate that so much. Holy
And it's
damn.
only available for a year.
It's
What
just
do you
like
think,
the
guys?
it's just like the what is it? The like Splatoon test fire and stuff like that. I mean,
Yeah.
that's a very
Oh, you're
different
right.
beast, but it's the same principle, you know, sort of specific hours and that. It's a Pokemon Go community day.
I will say, I think if they brought back like a Satellaview channel, like if they just made that part of Nintendo Switch Online and they had all sorts of different games that you could play throughout the day, I think that would actually be really sweet if they kept it to specific hours. But maybe if they like randomized it or they changed it up every week so that way somebody could play this during this time. I think it sounds annoying as hell, but I think it would be like a really fun community thing where like people would talk about like, don't forget to go play this game during this time. Like, I don't know. I think something about that sounds really charming, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Does that sound way more awful than it actually, you know, like, does that sound worse than I'm making it out to be?
It's as somebody who appreciates having everything on demand these days, that sounds terrible.
I mean, I can also see what Ian means, like, oh yeah, and then at 4, I need to play this game because I can't at other times. Maybe it would encourage you more to play this game now that you only have that time period. But I also agree with Alex that it's nice to have everything on demand, and it would be horrible to not be able to play it all the time. Imagine if you have to complete the entirety of The Witcher and you can only play 1 hour a day. You would never be done with the game.
That is a great point. I did forget about the fact that, yeah, you can only play for so long. And if you show up late, well,
Yeah, imagine if
Too
you have
bad.
to work. Oh no, I only
Yeah.
have 5 minutes left to play.
Sorry, boss, I can't come in today. You know, BS Breath of the Wild is running at 3 o'clock.
that's BS, Jimmy. You're coming into work whether you like it or not.
It really tickles me that all the Nintendo View games use BS as like a
Yeah.
prefix. It just tickles me.
Yeah, that is very funny.
I don't actually know the answer, but is it because of broadcast? Is it broadcast service or something like that?
Something like that, yeah. I can't remember exactly what, but it's something along those lines. It's perfectly innocent. It's not what people would generally mean when they say those two letters together these days, but it's still very funny.
It's precious. Yeah.
It is very funny.
So, plenty of options there. We sort of conversation derailed a little bit. If that's new to you, welcome to the channel. But yeah, let us know if you have any thoughts about how Nintendo could fill their enormous festering Zelda hole by leaving us a comment down below. And thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, then why don't you release Wind Waker HD, please? Just release it. And be sure
you
to
know
check
what
out
Alex wants.
NintendoLive.com for all sorts of lovely Nintendo-related content. Thank you again for watching. Bye-bye.
Zelda Dread 2.
I heard Nintendo's going to release the mystical seed of wisdom.